There have been suggestions that the people of Iran are going through a process that they must enter into in order to ultimately wind up changing things. On the other hand, how much of a price do they need to pay?
Right now, from the latest reports I have read and heard, it does appear that the Mousavi people are realizing that there is not a great mass base of support around the country for what they're doing, and that perhaps they are going to step back a bit, and hopefully some type of compromise could be worked out that would not lead to further destabilization in Iran, and that perhaps, the former president Rafsanjani is working behind the scenes to do that. There is an article in today's New York Times suggesting that Rafsanjani might be trying to play that role. Because I personally, I'm not Iranian, but it would not seem to me that the destabilization of Iran, further destabilization, is in the interest of the Iranians, because if you look at all the countries that have undergone these so-called color revolutions, I don't think it's done them any good.
What about the role of some of the other policymakers here under Obama? Talk about that some more and also explain more fully what the implications are of the role that's been played by individuals like Elizabeth Cheney at the State Department.
Well, as I said, my read of the situation is that the Obama administration has decided to try to inflict a color revolution on Iran and see if it works. And then if it doesn't work, or even if it does work, then they will have to sit down and proceed to negotiate with whoever is in power over in Iran. I still hope that is their intention. So that's the way I see it now. I think they're going to try as you correctly pointed out, this color revolution in Iran has been prepared, the groundwork prepared for quite some time, going to the Bush Jr. administration and now continuing with Obama. And we even have the admission that this fellow Cohn at the Bureau of Policy Planning and the State Department is somehow involved in orchestrating it. That's my guess. They're going to try to roll the dice on a color revolution, and then if that doesn't work, then they'll have to see who they're dealing with and hopefully negotiate. It's pretty much like what's happening in Afghanistan now, where if you were reading the accounts, the Taliban indicated that they were prepared to negotiate with the United States government, with the Obama administration. And yet, rather than doing that, the Obama administration has now decided to escalate with 21,000 U.S. troops in the, I guess, calculation that they will be in a better position to negotiate from strength as they see it. Meanwhile, of course, they're setting off a catastrophe for the people in Pakistan. So rather than sit down and negotiate in good faith right at the start, they're in the process, as they see it, of improving their power position before they negotiate. So I think here in Iran, what we're seeing is trying to inflict a color revolution first before they negotiate and see what happens. By the way, Iranian policy, of course, overall, Obama's special representative on Iranian policy is Dennis Ross. And Dennis Ross is basically nothing more than a hatchet man and a spear carrier for the Israel lobby. He was there at the State Department until last week when it was announced he's now moving to the White House to personally advise Obama. So if you look at the cast of characters here, Anne-Marie Slaughter, Dennis Ross, dealing with Iran, certainly these people are malevolent to the core. Whether cooler heads will prevail in the future, I really don't know. One would hope so, but I just can't predict.
Professor Boyle, what about the continuity here? Running certainly from former Vice President Dick Cheney to daughter Elizabeth Cheney, both working toward regime change in Iran. And then there are longer-running operations of a similar kind, led by prominent U.S. political figures like former National Security Advisors Zbigniew Brzezinski and even former Secretary of State under Nixon, Henry Kissinger, playing a role in D.C. again, right?
That's correct. Ross, certainly, who Obama did appoint as his point man on Iran, and still his point man on Iran, is an Israel lobby guy. I was up against him in the Middle East peace negotiations for the Palestinians. I can assure you Ross is more loyal to Israel than he is the United States of America. Slaughter, not much different from a neocon herself. She was good friends with Condoleezza Rice, and Rice appointed her to, I think it was something as silly as Rice's Democracy Promotion Committee there at the State Department, if you can believe any of that. But, that was the Bush propaganda. Right, we're just seeing a recycling of many of the architects of U.S. foreign policy for the past generation. General Jones at the National Security Council has publicly stated that he speaks with Henry Kissinger once a day. Brzezinski, when he worked for Carter as National Security Advisor, tried to orchestrate a military coup d'etat against the Iranian Revolution under Ayatollah Khomeini, run by a fellow named General Hauser. And it was that attempt by Brzezinski to inflict a coup d'etat to either put the Shah back in power or keep the Ayatollah out that led the students then to seize the U.S. Embassy in Iran and to hold it for fear there was going to be another coup d'etat, as there had been in 1953 when the United States government overthrew the democratically elected Mossadegh government because it had nationalized the Iranian oil fields and installed the Shah of Iran. Brzezinski was Obama's mentor at Columbia University, and behind Brzezinski, of course, is David Rockefeller. Brzezinski has been on the Rockefeller family payrolls, my understanding, since his days at Harvard. And the same was true for Kissinger. Kissinger has been on the Rockefeller family payroll from the very beginning of his academic career. And remember, it was Rockefeller who instructed Brzezinski to set up the Trilateral Commission, and Rockefeller and Brzezinski then co-opted a Georgia governor by the name of Jimmy Carter onto the Trilateral Commission. So we're sort of seeing here history repeating itself that I think they probably co-opted Obama as well. It's the same cast of characters. Richard Holbrooke, it doesn't surprise me at all. We're seeing the destabilization of Pakistan. We now have more refugees over there than the partition under the British of India, Pakistan, 2 million people at least. Wholesale slaughter being set off by Richard Holbrooke over in Pakistan, perhaps threatening a civil war over there. Well, Holbrooke was the fellow in charge of handling the Balkans for President Clinton and basically responsible for the massacre at Srebrenica that, 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men and boys were killed. Holbrooke, who's completely ruthless and unprincipled. If you look at the cast of characters around Obama advising him on foreign affairs, defense, counterterrorism, it's pretty much business as usual.
And just go over what the business interests are in this part of the world.
If you look at Central Asia and the Persian Gulf, they're 2/3 of the world energy supplies there in oil and gas, and certainly that's the control of the future of the world economic system right there. Despite statements by Obama, we're not really leaving Iraq. We still have 130,000 troops there, and they're even talking about a residual force of at least 50,000 in Iraq itself. There'll be more in Kuwait. Even Sam Huntington of Harvard, in his book Clash of Civilizations, argued after Gulf War I by Bush Sr. that the Persian Gulf has now become an American lake. And the reason we are over there is to control and dominate all that oil and gas, and that's how Iran also fits into the picture as well. They probably have, after Saudi Arabia and Iraq, the world's third largest supply, and either they do what we tell them to do or else will inflict regime change, and then if necessary, if that doesn't work, use military force.
Harvard scholar Francis A. Boyle has written and lectured extensively in the U.S. and abroad on the relationship between international law and politics. We will post more of this interview at our website, talknationradio.org. A leading international scholar and expert who has been teaching at the University of Illinois College of Law, Professor Francis A. Boyle has served as legal advisor to the Palestinian delegation to Mideast peace negotiations. He is author of many books taking on questions of international law in the U.S. and abroad. His latest book is Tackling America's Toughest Questions.